Figure out what's going on with Shaba. He's
Greetings. We are here. And we have our sister Loon in the house. She's in the house. Greetings, sis. Glad to have you here. And then to the Run Tell That family, you all saw them last week on the show. Shaba say he's in. So we just need to check it out and see maybe a link that from another time. So, but yes, we are glad to have you here in the house. And this is a continuation, because we're discussing a subject matter that some people don't always have the right idea about it. And sometimes for them, they think it's something foreign. And I need to say this. It pertains to African people in particular. African people in particular think there's something that is foreign to them and that they reject it, not understanding that it's something tied to you. And just to open up and throw a little capsule out there to folks, that what I've noticed and what I've seen is that things that are African, people teach us to dislike it, to despise it, and to turn away from it. But they'll come in their own way and they'll spread information, and they'll sometimes even co-opt and take it for themselves and then give it back to us. Or they'll create some narratives or some stories that are absolutely incorrect about it, but they have you rejected. And so many things that are tied to us, we reject it because, again, we get caught into somebody else telling our story. So our Sister Loom, there's some work that y'all been doing, and that's why this week right here, they've been doing work. Brother Shab and Sister Loom been doing work. It's a documentary, and they have traveled around to deal with, again, spirituality. And I have to go and say, an African foundation of spirituality. Not anything foreign to any of the beliefs that any of us have, but then when you begin to open up your mind's eye, you begin to hear some of it. That's when we go and say, hey, check this out. This is tied to me, and I don't have to be fearful. And Reverend Betty Jones, glad to have you here again. And again, to everyone out there, we say share. Check out the show. So, Sister Loom, what is the work that you all been involved in? What you all been doing?
Well, we have been involved in the work of reclaiming ourselves. And as part of that work, I want to claim my sojourner. He's out in the waiting room, waiting to be included in the show. So can we do that for him? Can we bring him in?
That's why the producers should be able to do that, because as I try to tell folks, but Run Tell That anytime anybody comes on, go ahead and get them in. So he may be, they say he's not backstage. It may be another link. What I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to send him the link that I have. So we do it like that. So yes.
All right. But in the meantime, we are on a journey to reclaim ourselves. We that are part of the African diaspora, we've been cut off from our roots, and we don't know our names. We don't know the people that we're from. We don't know how to, we are having to relearn how to exist in the absence of other forces, other groups. So Shaba, Kojo, and I, we have been on this journey, I want to say, for the past 10, 15 years. And initially it was just learning our history, learning what happened, how did we end up here, uh, who are we, especially, with like the Henry Louis Gates and, the
Yes.
African,
Uh-huh.
the
Hmm.
ancestry, the, reclaiming your roots and identifying who you were. Uh,
Hmm.
in doing that, then it's like, well, how did we live? What were our practices?
Right.
And
Yes. Yes.
and with that journey, coming to find out that we are very spiritual people, and that's something that we've held on to, that we didn't lose, but we had our own way of understanding things, dealing with the unseen, um, interacting and engaging with, the divine force, God, if you want to call,
Yes.
but we are believers. We are, people that are highly sensitive in this universe, and we experience things very differently than other groups. And having been cut off, it's important for us to really understand who we are, how we perceive things, so that we can be healthy in this space, because we're having a really hard time finding the proper balance, being healthy with the dynamics that exist right now.
Okay. And again, greetings to Brother Shaba. Glad to have you here. Glad to
There you
have
go,
you all here
Shaba.
in the house.
Shaba,
Yes.
I was advocating for you. Get Shaba in the show.
Let me see
All
if I
right.
can switch my hearing stuff here. Uh, okay.
So in the so in to that was the starting point of the journey, and to the point to today's point, to the point that where we are today, we're at where we have, um, going through this journey, we're realizing that we're not the only ones that are seeking. We're not the only ones that are confused, that are fearful about what it means to be us. And so as we learn, we are undergoing this, we're undertaking this endeavor so that we can share with others. So that, those that don't have, the opportunity to travel, don't have the access, don't have the relationships that we do, that we can still impart on them what we've learned, so that they can basically get those missing pieces of the puzzle that is, themselves.
Okay. And so I'll throw this out there because you alluded to something, and not alluded, you even said it. So, Brother Shab, I throw this out there to you. Why do we have a fear? Why do we have a fear? Where does the fear come from? Because we're going to delve more into with regards to the work that you're doing, kind of addresses with regards to people no longer having the fear. So why do you think we have the fear as African people in particular when it comes to spirituality that's tied to us, that's rooted, tied to Africa solely, and is not shaped with regards to the narratives of others?
Um, it's misinformation, miseducation of who we are as people. Carter G. Woodson covered that a very long time ago, and um, we tend to take other people's definition of us and other people's, particularly writings and viewpoints, and run with that. Um, for some reason, especially those here in the diaspora, we aren't rooted in who we really are. We don't see any reason to Sankofa.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and the world has moved on from the at least the world we know as the diaspora has moved on from the communal setting and from we're faced with all these new things, enterprise, industry, the industrial revolution. So we we're trying to fit into this world, and in order to fit into this world, that world runs on Christian references, and it's the religion of business in this hemisphere. um, And we were subjected to that on the continent as well, even with the influx of Islam. If you look at Mansa Musa, um, he was on his way to Hajj when he stopped in Kemet and spread that wealth, because he had also converted. Because at that time, when he was emperor of that region, the business of spirituality was Islam. So because we don't have any natural defenses against foreign religions, when they come into our communities and we take them on as our own, we tend not to sankofa anymore, and it's tragic because it doesn't really, we don't let go of how we express our spirituality. We just change the Godhead, if you will. And then it just becomes murky as to what it is we're really doing in other people's spiritual systems, because all we're doing is observing usually the way we've always observed, right? I don't know if that helps answer some of that, but it's deeply rooted in psychology and the psychology of miseducation.
Well, you said something, and so now and see, because you done offended some people, you done offended some members who are checking out the show. You done got some people upset about some things, and so then also, and that's when I know, and when that is said at times that or something along in those areas with regards to the words that are said, that cause people to bristle and not get upset. But then also I tell folks now, some brothers and sisters who have some understanding, because and traditionally, which is incorrect, that when we look at what we call the Nazarene way of life, that is, we look at Christianity, we look at Al-Islam, we look at Sabianism, we look at Judaism, that when people look at it and people are going to say, well, hey, that's not connected to Africa. Now, what happens, some other folks going to say, that is Africa. When they talk about the Holy Land is, now we know we've been taught and trained that say, oh no, that's not a part of it. So people are going to look at that. And some people then bristle, they say, so what the brother is saying right there is anti-me. And I tell folks, no, it's like that's a part of understanding, but also understand that those elements have been morphed by some other elements, by some other
Right.
groups. When I say morphed, they've been shaped by some things that will not necessarily say, we say tied to the original elements of it. So, and that's why I say we can take that, and that's why I say brothers and sisters will understand that, ain't no offense to like saying, okay, hey, so for some people are gonna say, well, hey, listen, we know where Al-Islam is connected. We know what Christianity said. We know what Sabianism ties to. Say, I actually say this. Some people don't even know about Sabianism, but then also with regard to Judaism. And so that comes into play. So, but now I'm gonna throw something out there to you all, and this right here. Our African people, because it kind of goes along with this, when some people think about it, our African people in your sojourn, in your travels that you all had, and see, I'm not looking at y'all, I'm looking up to the sky right now, because like it's something deep right now about to come out of my mouth. Our African people, are they atheists? Are they heathens? Are they pagans? So we go to you, Brother Shaba, first, then we go to Sister Loon.
So, let me circle back to finishing up my thought on the last statement. And that was, we've come into this saying recently in our communities that it's chess, not checkers, when we're dealing with reclaiming who we are. And if you look at a chessboard, you have, obviously by color, you have the white side and the black side. And each side has two bishops. And we know bishops to be, in that game of chess, they would represent the church, if you will. So in even that simplified version of breaking down the game, those white bishops that are on the board, if you're on the black side of the board, which I often pose as myself, those white bishops are not on my team. Those white bishops are there to destroy my side of the board. Those white bishops are there to help the white king conquer the black side of the board. So if I'm going to use my bishops, which represent the spiritual arm of my side of the board, then I can't use them in the exact same way the white side of the board is using them. I have to use them in a method that's going to allow me to, one, defend myself from the onslaught of this white side of the board, and two, help to strategize in order to conquer the king on that side of the board. So, when we get into things like, well, the origin of Christianity and the origin of Islam and it being rooted in African spirituality, well, when I speak of the Christianity that has affected us here in the diaspora, I'm speaking of the Christianity that is post, the Guggenheim press. I believe that's the right now. I might have said that incorrectly, but the Christianity that was canonized by Constantine and the Byzantine Empire, that is strictly a Roman Catholic Euro Christian worldview. It has nothing to do with Africa, but everything to do with Europeans ruling the world through the lens of the Christianity that they canonized into what they called the Holy Bible, which was distributed throughout our Ma'afa, right? So let me pin that there and move into the next section. And if you can just wrap up the end of the last question again so that I can pick up properly from where.
No, actually, I was going to interrupt you. Say now I'm mad with you because now you open up something else I can't even get into. But I'm like saying, wait a minute, because see, it's something else that you just said that I'm like, oh my God, why he even going there like that? Because then we're going to talk about what you were talking about. Something is racism, and people come with some stuff about race when it all comes about. But I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that alone because I'm like. I need to go bring that. We didn't have a conversation on that, but y'all heard what he said. So it's a part. I would just say a global system of domination and oppression. But I'm gonna leave that alone because you try to open up that door for me to go through. I was just sitting here like, why he see? Look at it. Look at it. That's a question because that's not a separate show right there. But anyway, what it is, African people. I'm gonna go back to it. African people. In your sojourn, in your journey with the gods, are African people atheists? Are they heathens?
Okay.
Are they pagans?
It is anti-African to not believe in a higher power. You cannot be African and atheist. It's against the ethos of truly representing Africa and being a child of Africa to not believe in a higher force. If you want to use the word God, if you want to, use the word Nkulu, if you want to use the word,
Yame.
There's just so many, right? Yame. I mean,
right.
We have Se, we have, Amun Ra. So we're born into it. We're born into a spiritualized world. We don't know any different. To be atheist is to have somehow been overwritten. In fact, at one point in my walk through life, I began to move away from Euro-Christianity because that was my first walk into the religious world. And I began to call myself an atheist. And it wasn't until studying deeper the root of what we call Afrocentricity at this point that I realized you cannot be both. You are African and spiritual, or you are something else.
All right. So, Sister Loom, are we atheists? Are we pagans? Are we heathens?
Firstly, I want to address Shaba Kojo because he has been my opponent in chess for decades. And I had no idea this man was going at me so hard because he was going at me spiritual and racial level. I wasn't playing on that level. That's why this man would have no mercy.
Woo! It has come out on Run Tell That.
Always let me claim the white pieces.
Well,
I understand. Now I understand.
War, all is fair in love and war, they say, right?
I thought it was all love. Anyway.
An exclusive on Run Tell That. Yeah.
We are not heathens. We are not pagans. We are not atheists. Those are narratives that we have assumed that belong to other groups that had applied it to us. And like Shaba Kojo was saying, and you said it as well, and our great ancestor Malcolm X, he had a speech on it, like, who taught you to hate yourself? And it doesn't solely apply to our phenotype, our thick lips, our flat and wide noses. It's not just that. It's every aspect of us, including our spirituality. We were taught to fear it. We were taught to hate it, and it's with reason, because if it didn't have any power, if it didn't have any substance to it, then they would just let it be, and it would be that. But it's because there is something behind it. And I concur with Shaba Kojo. And I was saying it even before he was added onto the show, that we are spiritual people. And it's difficult to separate that aspect of ourselves. And when we do, and in this situation, especially us in the diaspora, at times we separate ourselves and we find ourselves in an unhealthy place. And this is part of the journey that we're on, is to understand this aspect of ourselves and to hopefully teach it to others. And once again, I personally am not trying to convert anyone. I'm not trying to say that like we have all the answers, but this is part of who you are. If you recognize yourself to be, from the land of Africa, this is an aspect of who you are. And the more you know about it, the more you know about yourself.
Let me take 10 seconds at the end of what you just said.
Mhm.
There is no feature of African spiritual systems that are geared towards converting anyone. You're either born into it, or you seek it and find it, or you don't. There's there's no evangelism. And that's one of the reasons in a competitive spiritual world that Africans are not faring in the top slots, because we don't evangelize. There is no feature of our spiritual systems that allow for evangelism.
See, now I'm gonna say this right here. Um, you said that, but we understand that you were cunning enough to evangelize that you must have only the black when it comes to the chess pieces. I'm just saying that, yeah. But that goes to something, again, a conversation that we had on the first show, and that we've had other conversations outside of the shows, and that it goes to, again, with regard to the work that you are doing, and that when you say no evangelism with regards to this, that it is something, it is natural, it is the natural order, and that yes, it has been a plan put in place to not make us, actually, I tell folks, and I talk about this about being denatured, that basically almost ripping your spine out of you,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
give you something that's not an artificial, that you think is something that's a better spine,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
really that's not, it's not natural. And then there's still issues that come about because,
Yeah.
again, it is not natural. And so the natural element, but then somebody else got the natural element, and they're using parts of the natural element with regards to themselves. And so now we'll get into this, because I don't want to necessarily, because there's some things that you all both, Sister Loon has said, that what you said, brother, that I was like, oh, we need to talk about. But I want to go ahead and begin having a conversation about the work that you all been doing, and the travels, with some of the things that you have seen, observed, the insight you have gained, and the knowledge that you have gained with regards to, kind of like I'm saying, the kind of how that, I'm going to say this, to give us hope, give us joy, to give us, a sense of, we have always been first. We have always been first. And that's why I tell people this: the first people on the planet Earth to acknowledge that there's a higher power were African people. The first one to create the rituals for a higher power were African people. And so we get denatured at times when some African person now goes and says that they are atheists, then I know that person has been denatured. And they can be intelligent. They can be intelligent as hell. But because they've not been denatured, I understand. I said, you know what's happened to them? That is what oppression does. I said, and so they have now become so disheartened by it, that they're not out of it, out of the loop. And so with regards to your journeys, with regards to this, and about the reclamation that's been going on, so what has been some of the things that you found when you, and I'm going to hit areas. I'm going to hit areas because you travel. When you all have gone to, let's say, New Orleans, what has been some of the things that you found that helps with regards to that reclamation? You know,
New Orleans has a reputation for being number one, the most African city in the country, and number two, the most Catholic city in the country. And what I see when I get there is people who hold tightly to their traditions, to their togetherness. There is a I want to say a veneer of a melting pot there, but there is still that seed of separation at the bottom. You can just look at how the city is laid out. So when we get there, we tend to go to the areas that are populated by us, right? So we go to places like Algiers. The history is still so rich there. The delineating lines between formerly enslaved and free, between the French quarters and Treme, they're still so heavily observed that it's thick in the atmosphere. Yet, everyone will go down to the French quarters and party and kind of be in one accord. So it's kind of like why on the surface the melting pot, but then when it comes to how folks are actually living and carrying on their day-to-day lives, there's still so much what would you call it, redlining, if you will, or segregation in a sense. As far as spirituality, um, the culture is so closely tied to music and rhythms of Africa that it's hard to distinguish um, New Orleans culture and New Orleans spiritual observation just through the rhythms alone from places in Africa. Those rhythms are very familiar. The movements, the, the vibration is very similar, and you feel that in the city. And that's the thing that everyone is after, and they're not ashamed to have a different vibration. That vibration, however, is purely an African vibration. It's this the same pace that I see people move with in Africa. Um, it's the pace of people first, community first, in a sense. When you sit down with a brother or sister, they give their all to you in that short time. It's kind of like you get everything from a person without reservation, in a sense. And I get that similar feeling when I'm speaking with people on the continent.
Sister Lone, I'm glad you're back because Shaba just Shaba just went and did something that he just tried to pull a move on me, but guess what? I ain't white. I ain't white. I ain't white. He
For the
just tried
record,
to
neither
pull.
am I.
Right, I ain't white, and so I ain't no white chess piece. He just went and tried to say something, and all the audience out there, y'all know, Jamal was holding it in. He want to talk about New Orleans, that is the most African centered city, or per se, the rhythm, all that right there, New Orleans. And I'm like, oh my God, am I not in Savannah, Georgia? But I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna maintain my composure with regards to Sister Lou. What we'll
Yeah.
talk about is like on your journey, with regards to this work, when you all have gone, because we're gonna go to some locations that you all gone to, and you put it out there to the people for them to understand, what you all have experienced, what you've seen, and what have you witnessed and observed when you have gone to New Orleans, and with regards to the work that you all are doing.
Well, I mean, New Orleans being in the United
Can
States,
she hear? Let's
you
see if
get
she's
the
texting.
opportunity to, I think, what Shaba Kojo
She
might
says
have
we're
mentioned,
buffering.
comments that we have made amongst ourselves, in that it's very reminiscent of Haiti, because the French, were in Haiti and they were in Louisiana
Loon,
also.
can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you
Jamal, are
hear
you
me?
there?
Yes, uh-huh. We're
Yeah,
here. We see you.
yeah,
Okay,
I
I'm
can
not
hear you.
quite sure what's going on with her. Can you see her? Because I cannot.
Yes, yes, we can. You can't see her?
No.
She's at the bottom.
Okay, can you hear her?
Yes, uh-huh. Yes, she was talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hmm.
I can't hear or see
Oh,
her, so
really?
yeah,
Okay.
no worries. Let me log back in.
All right. Okay.
So, what I was saying is that knowing the history and knowing that the French using us as commodities would transport us to and fro, the islands and to the territories here in North America. So, um, being from IT, there are like the architecture and what have you are um, very reminiscent of structures that you would see in IT. Uh, there, and of course, being amongst us, we pick up aspects of their culture. So there is aspects of like the French culture, the food and what have you, pronunciations. Louisiana, they have, especially New Orleans, they have like their Creole. So in that, it's very much like almost going to IT, but not not leaving North America, not leaving the actual continent. But there is, of course, diversity there. And, something that I say a lot is that it appears that other groups, particularly Europeans, embrace the idea of voodoo
Mm,
more willingly than we do. And, or I can say that they're more public with their embrace. I want to say that we are still practicing and we still hold on to our culture, but it's in like a private setting, behind closed doors, as opposed to they're saying, oh, you do this. And, other people from other parts are interested in this, and I'm going to be the face of it. And right now, Europeans are the face of voodoo in Louisiana. In our research, in wanting to get in contact with those that priests, priestesses, we're being referred to Europeans. The
mm,
Europeans that go to IT to get to be able to get their titles and get their initiations done. So um, at this point, it just feels like our spirituality, like all aspects of ourselves, is for sale,
mm,
and
mm,
they they're purchasing it wholesale,
mm,
and we
mm,
have to stand back and ask ourselves why.
mm, mm. Okay. Powerful statement, sister. Powerful statement. It's all for sale. And so now we go to another area because you all have gone to work have been done. Brazil, what have you all seen with regard to when we talk about this in Brazil? So my sister Loon, we go to you first with regard to what have you seen, the connections and the sojourn there.
Well, we actually have not been to Brazil,
Oh, okay.
but
I thought you were okay. Okay.
if you have contacts, if you have anyone that practices over there and is willing to sit with us and help us to understand this spirituality that we've held on to on this side of the world, we will gladly make those connections. But unfortunately, we haven't. But Brazil is on the list. I'm encouraging Shaba Kojo, let's see who we can find that can hold our hand in Brazil and show us the way, because Brazil, as many of us know, has the largest African population outside of Africa, and
Yes.
thankfully, they have been able to hold on to the spiritual system and is very well known. And it's something that I want to see for myself and I want to experience for myself.
All right, yes. Candomblé by two, but we go to this since you mentioned the other and IT. What has been the experience and understanding in IT, the connection?
In IT, in terms of spirituality, or just comparing it to the
With regard
States?
to the work that you all have done. Yes. Hmm.
um,
You can't take 5 hours on it now. You can't. You understand? Give the
and
people
more,
tidbits.
5
That's what
hours
this is
and
about.
more.
We, now I'm just
Just
saying,
sit
just
back,
tidbits,
just sit
tidbits.
back. I got this
So,
show.
so
I got it.
we gonna go to Jamaica and then we going to Africa. So I'm just saying. So okay, and then we gotta come here too. But I'm just saying we ain't got 5 hours.
All right, you're gonna have to do a lot of edits. Um, but IT is special to me because that's my birthplace, and I see it through different eyes. I was um, in a privileged place
Mhm.
to be able to bring Shaba Kojo there in 2020 for the first time and really see IT, through the eyes of somebody else, through somebody else's lenses. And, um, you know, I've said that IT is perhaps maybe 20, 30 years behind, the rest of the hemisphere in terms of technology and development and infrastructure. But in a sense, I'm okay with that. And I want other Haitians to be okay with that because in doing so, we've been able to hold on to a lot of our practices, which doesn't involve a lot of technology. And, you still have the women, that pound, the spices had the mortar and pestles. We still do things in an old fashioned way, and it really makes you feel like you're outside of the United States. I was speaking to someone that accompanied us on our last trip a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying that I don't want to go to IT and feel like I'm still in the United States. And that's what you experience when you go into, these developed places. Everyone's mimicking the US, and it
Mm.
is becoming a cookie cutter world. So for that, I appreciate it, especially like my hometown. It's, deep outside of Port-au-Prince. And so we have our, we still have our little culture. Kashab Kojo calls it a quaint little town, about 7,000 right now. But and even that is very large because it wasn't always that. But everybody does their thing, their own way. You come in, everybody knows you're a stranger. They look to see, who brought you in, because you don't just show up there just like that. And yeah, and they deal with you accordingly. If you're a stranger, you don't have any attachments, they'll deal with you in a certain way. And if they see that you're attached to a family that they know or friends or what have you, you get a different reception. So in that, I want to keep it. I want to keep it like that. I don't want too much development.
Again, the statements made by Sister Loon are her statements solely. I'm
Yeah,
gonna say this to y'all. She's trying to talk about Patreonville. She's trying to talk about Patreonville. So I'm gonna say I like Patreonville. That's
then
her.
that's fine. That's fine for you to be able to have to reference, to have, when you want, your 4-star hotel and you want a certain type of living. But I don't need the whole country to be that.
Oh Lord.
That's all I'm
Lord.
saying. That's all I'm saying.
That's her opinion. But we not go, Brother Shaba, when IET, when you go there with regards to the efforts and the projects that you're working on, what the sense that you get, what do you feel?
It's spiritually rich. It's culturally rich. The soul of the people is still in the land. I comment to Luna all the time. It's hard. It's hard living. Haiti creates strong people because they have to put up with circumstances that people here in the States don't have to put up with. Even some people in some of the islands don't have to put up with. And they have to get it out the mud, literally, you know? And it creates a very hardened person. And that person is part of a community, and the community is hardened. But all you have to do is look someone straight in the eyes and say, bonjour.
Mhm.
Once you say hello, good day, bonsoir, the the warmth that you receive from a people that whose days are so hard, and you see the happiness in their souls just to have received a greeting, an acknowledgement that you know you may be a stranger, but you see them as human, and as soon as you see them as human, then they see the humanity in you. Um, if you don't do that, then they'll treat you accordingly. Like Loon said, that there is no um, patience for impolite, inhumane people in that place because life
Mm.
is just there's too much to do in life every day. And at the same time, the pace of life is still slower, and it, even though the traffic situations in Port-au-Prince and, as you said, places like Petionville that are more on the Euro development of sides, the African vibe that you get there is don't go there and think that you're not in an African nation, regardless of what you know what decor is in the front of a building or a restaurant. You're in an African nation, and they're going to deal with things in an African manner. And as me not being very fluent in Creole, it would be very easy for me to confuse being in the middle of Port-au-Prince with being in the middle of Cotonou, because Cotonou is French speaking, and Haiti is predominantly Creole speaking and then French speaking. So to me, I can be in either location and feel like I'm in the other, because the culture is so similar and the rhythm and the pace is so similar to being on the continent.
Okay, yes, and I tell you, one of my journeys to Haiti and had a sister there. She said, and again, you talk about the traffic in Port-au-Prince. It was like, I was like, nobody's paying attention to the traffic light. Nobody. If the traffic light don't even matter. You got to get in how you fit in, and then to see some
Keep
brothers
it
rolling
moving.
down the street with rebars and through this traffic like that. And the sister was like, she said, Haiti is the closest thing you can get to Africa here. And
Absolutely.
I like, okay. She's like, this is the closest thing to Africa that you
Hey,
get here in this hemisphere.
let me shape that statement differently. Haiti is Africa crystallized in this hemisphere because it was defended, and it didn't have a chance to be as denatured as other, you know, islands and places where we didn't have a chance to defend our African culture as much. So it's a transplant of Africa.
All
They
right.
were
Yeah.
even trying to get into the African Union recently, and the U.S. are the ones that scuttled
They
that whole
belong. They
process.
belong there. They should have let them into the
Well,
They
African
absolutely belong there.
and-
Uh,
and-
Haiti
and-
is more Africa than it is Caribbean or North or South American.
yes, yes, indeed. And in fact, when folks went to the UN, they're going to discuss that it was the Haitians diplomats that are the ones that schooled the new African nations, the independent African nations, on how the procedures at the UN. But now we're going to go to another place. We're going to go to your journey to a place called Jamaica. And there, so Brother Shaba, with regard to the work that you're all doing, what was some of the experience? And again, and you ain't got 12 hours to talk about that. I'm just going to let
So
you know.
what I told Loon when we were in Haiti is that I'm not going to partake in any of the divinations or spiritual rituals and things like that, because genetically it's inappropriate for my gene code. My gene code is different from Loon's gene code. Even though we're both African, she comes from um, one group of people and I come from another, and that's fine. So my gene code goes back to the Akan people, the tree speaking people, the people who are known in Jamaica today as the Maroons. So any direct connection that I need to get is going to be there. It's going to be walking the lands of my ancestors and invoking the names and the likenesses of my ancestors. And Loon has that opportunity to do that in Haiti. And in Jamaica, I got that exact opportunity to be amongst the people that are doing the exact same spiritual practices that my great 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 grandparents would have been doing. And that is the natural connection. For me, it's not about I need to convert to voodoo or I need to convert loon to abason or anything like that. It's about each of us finding that key that unlocks the spiritual parts of our genetic coding. So for her, because of where she was born and where her family tree goes, it's Haiti, and for me, it's Jamaica. So I got to be embedded with the Maroon um, group, particularly the Charlestown Maroon, at the foothills of the Blue Mountains in a place called Buff Bay, right along the river. I got to see Ma G pay homage to her stool and sacrifice to her stool right there along the Buff Bay River, where I bathed in as a child, where I went to school a little bit up the river from there. And I got to observe the drumming and the singing and the dancing. Um, I can say this now that I can compare. because Haiti is a much closer, I'm saying that incorrectly, because Haiti is a crystallization of Africa in this hemisphere, there is less lost in the translation when they reconnect. So there is a fierceness of drumming that they still hold on to. There is a fierceness of dancing and being ridden that they hold on to in Haiti that I haven't seen matched in other circles of let's say worship within our African sense. Only match that I can see in Benin so far, you know. So there are levels to this thing, right? And Haiti still has a very high vibration of the thing. Where I move to other circles, the vibration is not as as bright, if you will.
Intense.
And Sister Loon, we're now gonna come to you. And the producer then sent me a message saying we got 14 minutes left on the show, because I got to tell you, we're the little brother show of all our Black media shows. So now your thoughts with regard to Jamaica.
So Shaba Kojo was saying how, he is thankful that he was able to identify his line in Jamaica. But recall that when we were being snatched and we were being taken captive by the Europeans, they didn't care from which group they were taking us. We were all placed in, different plantations to do forced labor. So in IT, there is this amalgamation of groups, and we had to borrow from different parts of Africa in order to try to replicate what we knew there in this new place. And so in that, I wanted to mention that and make that a point, because there are going to be many of us here in North America that aren't going to be able to trace back directly or find groups that are practicing from their genetic group. But know that, your effort to reconnect to anything that you perceive to be of good, and is of the African spirit, I encourage anyone to seek after it. But thankfully, Shaba Kojo and I, we were able to connect directly to our ancestors, to groups that were from where we're from. But I don't want that to discourage anyone that isn't able to find a specific group that is tied to their genetic composition. But Jamaica was beautiful. I think that Jamaica, I mentioned it to Shaba Kojo, maybe Jamaica is 20 years ahead of Haiti in terms of technology, what have you, but the rhythm is the same. And I was so happy to find out that he was a mountain, he is someone of the mountains, because in IT, unfortunately, there are different things that are imposed on us. Everyone wants to believe that they're from Port-au-Prince, so everybody wants to say they're from Port-au-Prince because that's where the capital is, that's where development is. But there's a special connection when you are able to link yourself to someone who is also from outside of the capital, that's from the mountains. There's a certain kind of living, and when I was there, it was easy to fall into, and I can easily see myself being there. So if any of the listeners have the opportunity to have a guided tour, someone that is from Jamaica, that can take them outside of Kingston so that they can see how it is outside of it. It's a completely different vibe that everyone should expose themselves to, because it really helps you to reconnect.
Okay, yes, indeed. And so you share, Sister Lynn, one of the things that happened also with the Cabildos down, we know that happened in Cuba, that when you have groups of people, you had some of them, the Mahine and others, they were like saying, keep it amongst themselves. But they began to realize, like, wait a minute, some of our children are not going this route, and we got others coming in. So they like, we got to open the door for others to kind of come in. So, yes. And so I got to throw this out there. We can spend 2 minutes on this question, right? 2 minutes on this question. Each one of you 2 minutes on this question, because we gotta get to Africa. Because we gotta get to Africa. 2 minutes with regards to when you comment to what we know, the Gullah Geechee area. What's your thoughts with regards to that, and with regards on the sojourn you've been on when you come to the Gullah Geechee area, Sister Loon?
Listen,
Remember, I
I've
said
been trying to get to you guys forever. You ask Shaba Kojo. Like I when I learned about your group, um, I just wanted to connect. And I've been trying to get over there for the longest time. And I know that there's villages and what have you that we have yet to visit. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see wherever Africa is preserved. It excites me, it interests me. So I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm glad that you've held on because I know it's a fight.
we now come to Brother Shaba, who goes and talks about New Orleans. But again, we
So
chill. We chill.
so so again, the Gullah and the Geechee nations are nations. They're African nations preserved. So that they, to me, I wouldn't consider them in the same way I consider New Orleans to have been claimed already. Gullah and Geechee are strictly African. That's what we're doing up here. If that's not for you, then you don't need to be here. And I respect that about the culture. What I love about being there is the language and how you all were able to use what I consider patois in Jamaica in your own special. So I understand what's being said, because we did the same thing in Jamaica. We took the British English and we put our African culture on it, and we broke it down the way that Africans break down speaking. So just hearing that there are places in America where I can get that authentic African rhythm of speech that have existed since the beginning of this country and still exist today and will continue to exist. I don't need a passport to get to. I'm in. I take that drive. It's a simple thing for me. I'll take that drive just to be with you guys, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to be a sponge. I'm here to absorb those teachings and those interactions.
All right. So now we have, I'm going to say we got 8 minutes left. In the 8 minutes, we're going to leave this to your conversation, to both of your conversations regarding Africa, your journey, your sojourn with regard to Africa, what you experienced, what you have seen, some of the highlights with regards to that. So, Brother Sharp, we start with you first, and then we go to Sister Loon. So, Brother Sharp.
So we had the opportunity to first land in Arab Africa. That's Morocco. That area is still controlled by the Arabs. In fact, one of our first trips to Africa was to Kemet, which is an area that's, again, Arab controlled. We know that as Egypt. So seeing West Africa now through that viewpoint, you get to realize, look, them people up there in the north, them ain't African people. The African people decided that they were going to, give up those areas to the Arabs and let them do what they're doing up there. When you get to the West, when you get to the South, when you get to Central, now you're dealing with Africa. And the rhythm of Africa is specifically one that's tied to the rhythm of spirit. It's tied to the rhythm of culture. It's tied to the rhythm of community. Everything in Africa is laid out for a community to thrive. Just the layouts of the central markets through the main road. There's a speed bump that you have to go over in order to get. So it's like being on the highway, and then all of a sudden there's this huge speed bump, and then there's about a quarter mile, and that is the market for that village that you're passing through. And you can buy your food and your drinks or whatever you want to buy. Everyone in that market is centrally there, but they live away from that main area, and they all have land in the hills that they farm so that they can produce the things that they bring down to the market. That market culture is something that Luna and I speak about. It's so African. Forget about this this farmers market thing. That's something that the African market, especially the one in Benin, it's like no place in the world. I mean, one of the largest African markets in the Western Africa is in Benin, and it's just the size and the scale and the movement and the pace of that place is unreal. You have to go there and you have to experience being in those crowds and
The energy.
getting and discharging that energy as you move through, because there is no personal space in these places. You are
Mm.
elbow to elbow with people, and it's hot. But it's the pace much different. When you get to America, there's so much distance between you and another human being, it's almost inhuman. You know, that's one of the, like, the inhumanity starts when you get through immigration to come back into the States, and you realize how divided and pushed apart everything is. When you get to the continent, you realize how close connected together, even
Mm.
to the point of not having personal space. And it works better for African people to live that way.
All right. And Sister Loon, we got 3 minutes for you. 3 minutes. And this is with regard to the spiritual element, that with regards to Don, that what you observe with Africa and the connection with regards to some of the layers that are connected to all of us.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Oh, I would like saying that if you can talk about and share that with regard to the spiritual elements that you have seen, that some may say voodoo, that you went while there in Africa, what you experienced, and then some of the connections that you saw throughout when you gone to, say, the U.S., when you gone to the Caribbean and that. But again, but coming from the Africa, but what you experienced in Africa, that some of us go back and say that's back home.
Mm-hmm. The altars. The altars being in public spaces really took me aback, because we're from a place in this hemisphere where, you have to hide it. Not everyone's receptive of it. So it was refreshing to go to Benin and just see the altars in public spaces and town building structures, playing out different scenes and different energies that they believe that they are in connection with in that space. Um, and then to go to Haiti, and I don't have the eyes for it. So I had my little brother as the guide, and he was born and raised there. And he's like, okay, over there, this is alluding to voodoo, and this is alluding to voodoo. It's there in plain sight. You just have to know it. Um, and this is part of our project to help everyone here in this hemisphere realize that there are a lot of things that are voodoo, that are in plain sight, that we do, and we just don't have the eyes for it because of our experience in the Maafa. But it's there for us, and it's there for us to reclaim.
Okay. All right. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Something that you all has shared, that you see with the Catholic Church, that you have churches that are in places that have a spiritual significance, and y'all can either one you can elaborate on that, and give some insight to. I want the people in the audience to hear that and know that.
Shaba?
So for instance, in Ouida, which is the city where we were shipped from in Benin, there is a Catholic church right across from the largest voodoo temple in Ouida. Voodoo temple is the temple of Dan, Dan being the snake, relating back to Dambala, the python. And you go through a lot of snake montages when you deal with spirituality. Unfortunately, in the Bible, it kind of goes left, but in South America and other cultures and Mexican cultures, the snake is revered because it relates back to that primal state of our genetic development.
We ain't got but a
So
minute and a half, Shaba. We ain't got but a minute
so
and
the
a half.
largest temple in Ouida, the Temple of Dan, there's a towering Catholic church right across the street. In fact, it's hard to be in that temple and not see that Catholic church. And this is done again through planning and execution. These people know what they are doing when they come into a community and wish to evangelize and turn people away and denature people. And they go to our spiritual centers, and if they can completely destroy our spiritual centers and rebuild upon them, that's the preferred method. But if they can't do that because the people resist, then they will build right next to it in order to siphon off observers.
That is a significant statement right there. When you all shared it with me, like I said, and like it's something that but you really didn't know. You knew it, but then you didn't grasp the magnitude of it. And when y'all said that, and that's why I might saying so again. So when we fight against this, but then you're gonna see with the Catholic Church has now gone and say we're gonna infuse, we're gonna put ourselves on top of or right by it, as if this is like Toyota and GM competing against one another. But it's spirituality, and it's African spirituality. That's what, again, so the very thing we started out with, that's what it's come down to. And y'all doing this documentary. Again, how can people be in touch with y'all, get in touch with y'all before we close out? Because they're going to cut us off in a few minutes, in a few seconds, let y'all know. So how can people get in touch with y'all and learn more about the project, what you all working on?
So you go to shoolay.com, and I guess I can try to type that here in the comments, but I'm not signed in. SHOOLAY.com. Anywhere on that website, you can get to our social medias.
I'm laughing.
Social medias.
Reverend Betty Jones saying another session is needed.
Oh, I see that now. Yeah, that's no problem at all. We're here to share what we learned. That's all we ever wanted to
do. It won't be next week, but we're going to coordinate it. We're going to do a part 3. We've only done part 3s with Queen Quet and now with Sister Loom and Shaba Kojo.
Wow. Yeah, so,
honored, very honored.
We're here.
So yeah, and so we're gonna be back. I'm gonna say, brothers and sisters, we're honored to have you all here on Run Tell That. And so I guess, and now we can get even deeper. Now we can go talk even more about this with regards to Africa and what you all saw, what you observed. Because now part 3 gonna be Africa. It's gonna be Africa.
Okay.
So
okay.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you all. Excuse me. Give the site again. Give the site again.
Shoolay. SHOOLAY.com. If you go to videos or any of those links across the top of that page, you can get in touch with our social medias, and you can see what we're doing there.
We give the people what they want, and the people want y'all again. And so we're gonna go forward again. We appreciate y'all joining us on this segment right here. We've learned some things about Brother Shaba. You know, he only wants the black, and he think New Orleans and all of that. And some of us right here, but I'm gonna leave that alone. But we're gonna have him again on the show. This is our family right here. Glad to have y'all. We said y'all peace and blessings.
Like this.